This video is for all the Scorpio risings out there. So if you didn't already know, the rising sign, otherwise known as the ascendant, is basically the sign that was on the horizon at the time you were born. I know that sounds really confusing, but the rising sign just tells us a lot about ourselves. The rising sign rules over the first house in your birth chart. First house means the body, the self-esteem, who you are, self-identity. It's literally everything to do with you, which is why the rising sign is arguably the most important part of your birth chart. It literally sets up the way that your birth chart is going to look. Now, if you're a Scorpio rising, okay, so the sign of Scorpio has everything to do with transformation. It's a water sign. It's very emotional, but it's also a fixed sign. So it's very stubborn, not a huge fan of change unless they are the ones initiating it. The Scorpio energy kind of has this juxtaposition of being a fixed sign, and like fixed signs typically don't, quote unquote, enjoy change. But Scorpios are associated with transformation, which is a type of change. So just to make that clear, sometimes Scorpio energy is kind of forced into a change by external circumstances, which is why it kind of has that painful energy sometimes. That's, the nature of having a sign that's ruled by one of the malefics. The malefics bringing, a little bit of trouble, Mars being a malefic. Scorpio risings might find that they have to consistently adapt to their environment to be okay emotionally. Scorpio risings more often than not are really attractive, very alluring. I feel like when a Scorpio rising walks into a room, you will know, because not only because you have that Scorpio rising, but also because your 10th house is in Leo. The 10th house is the most seen area of your chart, and Leo is a sign that shines very brightly. Scorpio risings tend to have this very magnetic presence about them whenever they're around others. Back to the first house information. Scorpio is a very secretive sign, so there's definitely a lot about your identity and your just personality in general that is not just available to the general public. As outgoing as you can be with that Leo midheaven, Scorpio risings are not about to sit here and tell you every single detail about themselves. Your first house would be ruled by Mars. Mars, like I mentioned earlier, is a malefic. So the malefics in astrology are Saturn and Mars, and wherever they are, they bring a little bit of trouble to that area of your life. So having it in the first house of identity, Scorpio risings might find themselves kind of struggling with who they are or expressing who they are. You might feel like your general personality might need to be smoothed over to be palatable for other people sometimes. Or you might feel like there are some parts of you that are so vulnerable that you just can't show them to other people. So the nature of who you are can kind of push and shove at you sometimes. But on the other hand, having Mars ruling the first house of self is obviously going to make you very sexy. Some celebrities who have Scorpio risings are Diana Ross, Prince, and Chrissy Teigen. So you definitely want to look at your Mars placement and the house that your Mars is in, and it's going to tell you a lot more about your appearance and a lot more about your general personality. For example, Diana Ross, she was a musician. Her Mars is in her 8th house of Gemini. The 8th house is a house of finances, sexuality, things like that. Prince has his Mars in the 6th house of Aries. Prince was also a musician, so his general personality had everything to do with his job. Chrissy Teigen has her Mars in her 12th house of Libra. Something about her personality is very hidden or feels very suspicious to other people. Having Mars ruling the first house is gonna make you a naturally sexy person. People are going to be attracted to you, and you are going to feel more comfortable in your sexual energy than other zodiac signs. Obviously, the aspects to your Mars are gonna let you know just how comfortable you are sexually. So directly opposite from the first house of self is the 7th house of the other. So the 7th house in traditional astrology rules over marriage, partnerships, possibly even business partners, but sometimes open enemies. Scorpio risings have Taurus in the 7th house. So basically the 7th house rules over your type, right? So having Taurus in the 7th house means that you're very attracted to people who are really chill, very much homebodies. They love to make other people comfortable. They might even be a little bit lazy, but they're really hardworking when they are ready to get up and work. Taurus is also a sign that's ruled by Venus. So having a Venus ruled 7th house is a little lucky in my opinion. You attract the type of partners who want to make you feel safe, who want to make you feel at home, who want to make you comfortable. That's all about Taurus energy. Also, Taurus is the sign of money, or it's one of the signs of money, and it's sitting in your 7th house of other people. So you might end up picking partners who are pretty good with money, or who make a lot of money. Scorpio is also a sign of money. It's more of the sign of receiving money and investment. I think Scorpio risings are really good at gaining money from other people, whichever way they do it. For example, if you're a waitress or something, you probably make really good tips if you're a Scorpio rising. That's just an example. On to the second house, 8th house axis, where we talk a little bit more about money. Scorpios have Sagittarius in the second house. Here's what's interesting. So Scorpio is ruled by both Mars and Pluto. Pluto rules over that transformational energy. It rules over power, control, influence, and also money to an extent. So Pluto is one of your chart rulers. So I previously mentioned Mars. Pluto is the ruler of Scorpio in modern astrology. So having one half of your chart rulers in your second house of money, morals, material things, can mean that you as a Scorpio rising can be a bit materialistic sometimes. Pluto can also represent where you gain power. So like you can gain a lot of power from having a lot of money. Another thing about Pluto is that it rules over the extremes, right? So if you're a Gen Z, you most likely have Pluto in your second house. Really just check out your birth chart and I think you should just read your birth chart along with this as you watch this reading. Having Sagittarius in the second house means that you like to be financially free. Sagittarius energy is all about freedom. It's all about learning new things. Having it concentrated in an area of your life dealing with the finances. Scorpio risings are not afraid to get out there and learn everything there is to learn about money and, gaining money, investing, things like that. That's something y'all are going to be really interested in learning some point in your life. Now, the second house is more of like your bank accounts, like what you have, right? So, Pluto rules over extremes. So either extremely wealthy or extremely poor. And you might experience both of them throughout your lifetime. That deals with the money that you have. Now, directly opposite from the second house is the eighth house. The eighth house is a very hidden area of your chart. It's all about sex. It's all about transformation, it's all about spirituality, and it's also all about other people's money. The eighth house is also rules over sudden losses and sudden gains, just very shocking things in general. First of all, having Gemini in the eighth house, which is one of the sexual houses, just means that Scorpio risings are very versatile in the bed, which obviously we already knew that because Scorpio rising is a very sexy sign, but more so involved if you have Gemini placement. Also, Gemini rules over communication and, friends and things like that. So having Gemini in the eighth house can kind of mean that you might have friends who keep secrets from you, or you might often find yourself keeping secrets from your friends, or just not disclosing all of your information, to your friends. Which there's nothing wrong with that. Now, your eighth house is ruled by Mercury, so definitely go ahead and look at your Mercury sign in your birth chart, and it'll give you a little bit more information on that. Having an eighth house ruled by Mercury just means that you're very open to learning about, these taboo topics, these spiritual topics, these sexual topics. It just seems like Scorpio risings are very open to learning about money, everything there is to know, about having it, keeping it, receiving it, things like that. Now, the third house is where we get into a little bit of your communication. The third house rules over contracts, short-term travel. It rules over, your cars, your vehicles, things like that. It also rules over your siblings. Anytime you have Capricorn in a certain house in your chart, this area of your life is going to be a bit of an uphill battle because you have Capricorn here. Capricorn is ruled by Saturn, which is, one of the malefics in astrology, and it kind of is always teaching you these really hard lessons. So having a third house ruled by Saturn might mean that you might typically have car trouble, throughout your life, or you might have, trouble with other people thinking that you're too mean in your communication sometimes, or thinking that you're too blunt in your communication. Third house does rule over communication and mindset and things like that. But it just seems like, you're learning some lessons regarding traveling and stuff like that. You definitely want to check out where Saturn is in your birth chart and the aspects it's making to other planets. Also, the third house does rule over learning, so you're going to find yourself learning a lot from people who are Capricorns. Now, directly opposite from the third house is the ninth house. The ninth house rules over long-term travel, social media to a certain extent. There are like a few houses that rule over social media. Ninth house also rules over college, academia, higher learning, but also, that core belief system that you have. Like, do you believe in God? Do you not believe in God? That kind of things. It's the ninth house is very existential, and you'll notice that you'll be able to learn a lot from people who have Cancer placements too. Both the third house and the ninth house rule over learning to an extent, so Cancer and Capricorn people are going to teach you a lot about life. Now, you have a ninth house that's ruled by your moon, so depending on the sign that your moon is in and the house that your moon is in, and it'll tell you about your emotional state. Your belief system is going to be highly influenced by your mother. The moon represents the mom in astrology. So you might have a very similar belief system to your mom, or you might have a starkly contrasted belief system to your mom. Either way, your mom influences a lot of the core beliefs that you have. The place that your moon is in your birth chart is going to tell you types of things that your mom has been teaching you. For example, if you have a Scorpio rising who has a moon in the Pisces fifth house, You would have a mom who teaches you a lot about creativity, who teaches you a lot about children in general. You know, it's going to give you some insight onto your mom and your connection with her. But also just having Cancer in the 9th house just means that you're very open to learning things about empathy. You might be a type of humanitarian type of person because you feel empathy for other people very easily. Scorpio risings also have an Aquarius 4th house. Now, the 4th house is the most private sector of your birth chart. It's not hidden like the 8th house and the 12th houses are. It's very private, so only people who know you the best see this side of you. Having an Aquarius 4th house just means that the way that you grew up is kind of very different from the way other people grew up. Aquarius energy is very innovative. It's ruled by both Saturn and Uranus. So Saturn ruling over time and teaching you lessons and, you know, being dedicated to something. And Uranus is the energy of very shocking transformations. So your relationship to your family might sometimes feel like an uphill battle, and you might have to take on a lot more responsibility than you're used to or that you want to take on. But at the end of the day, you'll still be seen as very innovative compared to the rest of your family. You might be the fixer in your family, you know, where you're coming up with all these creative ideas to solve the problems of your family. You know, Aquarius energy is very serious, but it's also, you know, just ready to help, very humanitarian. Now, if you are a member of Gen Z, you most likely have Neptune and Uranus here. So Neptune, wherever it is, it clouds up things, it makes them confusing, but it also adds a little bit of creativity, but it also deals with addiction. So some Scorpio risings who are Gen Z might have had problems with family member who has an addiction issue, but you also might have had a very creative family, or both. You might have been born to a family of musicians, of artists. You also might find yourself at your most creative when you're at home. That's another way to look at Neptune in the 4th house. You also have Uranus here, and some of you guys might have a conjunction between Neptune and Uranus. Having Uranus in the 4th house just means that very shocking things can just happen. One day your family life looks like this, and then all of a sudden, the next day, everything has just changed completely. Very shocking happenings, very shocking revelations happening in your 4th house of home and family. Now, directly opposite from the 4th house is the 10th house, and like I mentioned earlier, it's the very tip top of the birth chart. It is literally what is seen by everyone, everything, every person. It's your curated version of yourself that you show the public. So this is going to be your social media profiles. This is going to be, you know, who you are when you're at a party. This is going to be your first impression on other people. Scorpio risings have a Leo 10th house. So your sun sign has a lot to do on what other people think about you, right? So for example, if you're a Scorpio rising who has a Gemini sun in the 8th house, you might be a little bit more private. So like I said, it really just depends, and you know, for sure, if you don't get a chart reading with me, you definitely want to get a chart reading with an astrologer at some point in your life. It'll really help. The 10th house is all about your reputation, your public image, but also your career. So Scorpio risings are probably drawn towards careers where they can really express themselves. You know, content creation, acting, musician, you know, something very creative. All the zodiac signs are creative in their own way, but Leo is the sign that brings a lot of attention to their creativity. You know, they're very lively, they're very bubbly, generally very happy. So I wouldn't be surprised that Scorpio risings have a pretty good reputation, or at least a very long-lasting career, because Leo is fixed fire. Fire representing passion, so very passionate about your career for a very long time. Fixed representing not changing very much. So, you know, very passionate about your career for a very long time. Very creative in your career for a very long time. Comment down below what your sun sign is and the house that it's in, and what career you have or are planning to have in the future. Scorpio risings also have a Pisces 5th house. So the 5th house is all about creativity. It's all about children, lighthearted dating, you know, flings, and also it's one of the sexual houses. Scorpio risings might find themselves sexually attracted to people who have Pisces and Gemini placements. Anybody who has placements in your 5th house, it might be the type of person that you might find yourself wanting to have children with at some point in your life. Now, having Pisces in the 5th house of creativity also just means that Scorpio risings are insanely creative, and I just feel like this is reinforced in your chart by your Leo 10th house, but once again by having Pisces in the 5th house. Pisces is the last sign of the zodiac, so it has a bit of each of the signs within it. So it's very good for Pisces to relate to other people, and it's very good for Pisces to tap into different energies. So having this in your 5th house just means that you might try a lot of different avenues of creativity. You might go from creating music to creating art to or you might even go to writing. Scorpio risings most likely have more than one type of creative talent. Your 5th house is ruled by both Jupiter and Neptune, so Jupiter is the planet of abundance. It expands whatever it touches, you know, it brings you good luck. So you might generally have good luck with your creativity. It's also ruled by Neptune, which Neptune does rule over cloudiness. The downside of having both of these planets ruling over your 5th house is that sometimes you might go overboard. Like, you might start partying a bit too much. Both the negative qualities of Jupiter and Neptune have to deal with overindulgence, having way too much fun and not getting nearly enough work done. Now, directly opposite from the 5th house is your 11th house. So the 11th house is all about your long-term friends and also networking. Also just communities, you know, groups that you belong to. Your 11th house can kind of tell you how you are as a friend to other people. And having Virgo in the 11th house just means that you're consistently trying to make your friends like perfect, you know, trying to organize everyone. You might be like the mom of the friend group sometimes. Your 11th house is also ruled by Mercury. So anytime Mercury goes retrograde, you know, you might find yourself having more issues with your friends than other zodiac signs do. Your 8th house of sexuality and spirituality and money and all of that is also ruled by Mercury. Anytime Mercury goes retrograde, it's going to influence your relationship with your friends and your sex life and your budgeting situation. But anyways, you most likely get along with Virgos really well. You might meet Virgo people and just instantly get along with them. Your 11th house is all about, you know, those long-term people who are meant to stay in your life. You also might notice that Virgo placements are very supportive of your dreams because the 11th house also rules over wishes and dreams and, you know, your goals in life. Virgo people might be the ones to go to if you need encouragement. Now let's go ahead into your 6th house. The 6th house is all about work, daily routine, you know, your job, also your pets, and possibly even your health. So having Aries in the 6th house might mean that you're very interested in fitness, but also just that you're very independent in your daily life. You know, Aries is a sign that deals with independence, very passionate, but also Aries kind of expects like immediate results from the things that it does. So you might find yourself changing up your daily routine a lot because you want to find the most effective way to live day-to-day life. Now, your 6th house is ruled by Mars, which is a malefic, which might, you know, lead to you having some health issues, possibly even dealing with the head because Aries does rule over the head. Yeah, you definitely want to look at your Mars placement because it'll give you a lot more insight to that. But directly opposite of the 6th house is the 12th house. The 12th house is one of the hidden houses. Child. So the 12th house is all about spirituality, it's all about mental health, but it also represents isolation and bad fortune at times. It can also represent hidden enemies. So basically the hidden aspect of your life has Libra in it. The sign of Libra deals with communication. It deals with, you know, creating harmony in your relationship. Libra at its heart just wants everyone to get along. And this is a hidden aspect of you. So other people might look at you and might think that you're not very interested in working things out and creating balance in your relationships, coming to a compromise. You might be pretty bad at that because that's something that's very subconscious for you. You know, it's not something that just comes very naturally. But I also should warn you, people who have Libra placements might secretly be jealous of you, or they might secretly dislike you, or, you know, talk behind your back. I'm not going to say every single Libra placement is going to give you that reaction, but I do think you should be a bit careful around them. Either way, thank you, Scorpio risers, for watching your little reading thing. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments down below, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see y'all later.